Maria sat by the window, gazing out at the rain. It was a cold, dreary morning, and the world outside looked just as empty as she felt inside. The gray clouds hung low in the sky, and the streets were quiet. She could hear the soft hum of the old clock on the wall ticking steadily, but everything else seemed still, almost too still. She had been sitting there for what felt like hours, unable to move, unable to think clearly. Her heart was heavy, as if it knew something was about to happen, something that she wasn't ready for. Beside her, curled up on the couch, lay Whiskers, the cat who had been by her side for so many years. She gently ran her fingers through his soft fur, the warmth of his body comforting in a way she hadn't realized she needed. But as her fingers brushed over his back, she could feel how thin he had become. His once round belly, always full of energy, now seemed fragile. His breathing, slow and steady, had changed. It wasn't the quick, energetic breath of a young, healthy cat. It was slower, weaker. Maria's chest tightened. She had known for a while now that something was wrong. Whiskers hadn't been playing like he used to. He didn't chase the toys anymore, didn't climb on the windowsill to watch the birds outside. He just laid there. She looked at his face. His eyes, once bright and full of life, were now dull and clouded. But in those eyes, she still saw the love. She still saw the connection they had always shared. Whiskers was trying to tell her something. She was sure of it. But what? Her mind raced with thoughts of all the memories they had together. The first time they met, when he was just a tiny kitten, his eyes wide with curiosity. How he had nuzzled her hand for the first time, purring softly, as if he already knew he was home. How they had spent every day together, growing older, but always with that unspoken bond that only a cat and their person could have. But now, all of that seemed so distant. The playful meows, the soft purring, the moments of joy, they were all fading. Whiskers was still there, yes, but it was like he was slowly slipping away, little by little. Maria didn't know how much longer she could hold on to him. She sighed, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Her heart ached with the thought of losing him. She wasn't ready. She wasn't prepared. The rain outside picked up, the drops hitting the window harder now, as if the world itself was crying. Maria wiped a tear from her cheek, but it wasn't enough. The sadness was too deep. She had always thought she would have more time with Whiskers. They still had so much more to share, so many more quiet evenings, so many more adventures together. But that wasn't how life worked, was it? Nothing was promised. Just as Maria was lost in her thoughts, she heard a faint sound, a soft meow. It was weak, almost too soft to hear. Maria's heart skipped a beat as she turned to look at Whiskers. He lifted his head slightly, his eyes meeting hers, filled with something Maria couldn't explain. Was it pain? Was it love? Or was it a message, one last thing he needed to say before he was gone? Maria leaned forward, her heart racing. She placed her hand on Whiskers' head gently. His fur was cool, but she could feel his warmth through it, the familiar comfort that had always been there. For a moment, it was just the two of them, alone in the room. The rest of the world seemed to disappear. The ticking of the clock grew quieter, and the rain outside faded into the background. All that was left was Maria and Whiskers, a bond that had lasted for so long. Whiskers slowly shifted, his paw moving towards Maria's hand. His movement was slow, but it was purposeful. With great effort, he placed his paw on her hand, the touch gentle but filled with meaning. Maria gasped, her breath catching in her throat. She had never seen him do this before, not like this. It was as if he was telling her something, something she needed to hear. She stroked his fur again, her fingers trembling. "I love you, Whiskers," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm not ready to say goodbye. I can't." Whiskers' eyes fluttered as if he understood. He meowed again, a little louder this time. The sound was soft, but it held so much emotion. He had always been there for her, always by her side, through the highs and the lows. He had been her companion, her friend, and now it seemed like he was trying to give her something. Something that only he could give. Maria looked at him, the tears falling freely now. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered again, her heart aching. "You've been my best friend for so long. I can't imagine my life without you." But as the words left her lips, she knew in her heart that she couldn't stop what was coming. Whiskers had already given her so much. His love, his loyalty, his warmth. He had been the one constant in her life. And now, it seemed like his time was coming to an end. Whiskers let out another soft meow. And this time, it was different. It wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't a cry for attention. It was a message. Maria's heart broke as she realized what he was doing. Whiskers wasn't just saying goodbye. He was giving her a final gift, a gift of love, a reminder of the bond they shared. He was telling her that it was okay to let him go, that he would always be with her in spirit. As she held his paw, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. This wasn't the end. This was just another chapter, and she would carry Whiskers with her forever. The rain continued to pour outside, but Maria didn't notice the storm anymore. The world around her had faded into the background, and all that mattered now was Whiskers. His soft breathing, his gentle touch on her hand. It was as if the room had frozen in time. Her heart ached with every passing second, but there was also a quiet sense of calm. She didn't know how much time they had left, but she knew she would never forget these moments. Whiskers' eyes flickered, and for a brief moment, it was as though he was looking beyond her, beyond the room, into something distant, something beyond this world. Maria's throat tightened, and she fought back another wave of tears. "Whiskers," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He looked up at her, his eyes full of love, and in that instant, Maria knew. She knew that he was telling her it was time. Time to say goodbye. But how? How could she let go of the one thing in her life that had never failed her? Whiskers had been there for every sad moment, every lonely night. He had sat with her when she was sick, comforted her when she cried, and made her laugh when she needed it the most. She couldn't imagine a world without him by her side. As if he could hear her thoughts, Whiskers gave a soft, quiet meow, a sound so faint it was almost lost in the silence. He shifted slightly, his frail body moving just enough to nuzzle her hand, as though reassuring her. Maria squeezed his paw gently, her fingers trembling as she fought to keep her composure. "It's okay," she whispered, though her voice cracked. "I'll always remember you." She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to remember all the little things about him. The way he would curl up on the couch beside her, the soft purring sound that filled the room when he was happy, the way he would nudge her for attention when he wanted to play. Those moments seemed like a lifetime ago, but they were so precious. They were her treasure, and she would hold onto them forever. Whiskers' breathing grew even slower, and Maria could feel the warmth of his small body starting to fade. Her heart broke, but she knew it wasn't about her anymore. This wasn't about her sadness. It was about Whiskers and his journey. He had given her so much love over the years, and now it was his turn to rest. "I'm so lucky to have had you," she whispered, stroking his fur one last time. "I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me." She pressed her face to his fur, letting the tears fall freely now. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, but it was also the most loving thing she could do. Let him go with love in her heart. Whiskers stirred slightly, his tiny body weak, but still holding on to the last bit of life. His paw gave one last gentle squeeze to her hand, as if to say, "It's okay, Maria. I'll always be with you." The room seemed to grow even quieter, the ticking of the clock the only sound in the stillness. Maria stayed close to him, her hands warm against his fur, as if holding on to him would keep him here forever. She could feel the pulse of his life, the small, steady beat of his heart, growing slower and slower with each passing moment. Then, as if the world had gently whispered its farewell, Whiskers took one final breath. It was soft, like a sigh, and in that moment, everything seemed to stop. Maria's heart stopped for a beat as well. She closed her eyes, her hand still resting on him, as she felt the last of his warmth fade away. Whiskers was gone. Maria didn't move at first. She didn't know how long she sat there, her face buried in his fur, her hands still on his body. The tears came in waves, flooding her with sorrow, but there was also a strange sense of peace. She knew that Whiskers had lived a full life. His love had been a gift, and she would carry that gift with her always. In the silence, Maria whispered again, her voice barely audible. "I love you, Whiskers. Always." It was all she could say. She couldn't find the words to express the depth of her grief, but she didn't need to. Whiskers had always understood her without words. He had always known what she needed, and now he had given her one final gift, the gift of knowing it was okay to let go. She gently lifted him in her arms, cradling him one last time. As tears fell freely, her heart felt shattered, but there was a strange beauty in the moment. The love between her and Whiskers would never fade. It was in her heart now, a part of her soul, and it always would be. As she held him, she looked out the window at the rain, still pouring outside. The world was gray and empty, but in her heart there was warmth, there was love, and that love would stay with her forever.